She loved to work. She was a workaholic.
But around noon that day, Deborah's stepdaughter Elizabeth calls Palm Beach County 911 to request a welfare check at her mother's house.
Yes, I've tried texting her. I've tried calling her. She's not responding.
It was a few days I haven't heard from her.
She's been calling her, texting her, no answer. Her calls are going straight to voicemail.
This was not like her mother.
So earlier that morning, Elizabeth had decided to go check on her.
Mom? Mom, are you in there?
I called out to her as loud as I could, and I didn't get any response. I looked through the front windows of the house. I didn't see anybody.
She also notices that her mother's SUV isn't in the driveway.
She wonders if her mother has gone somewhere unexpectedly, but decides to go around back and check just in case.
But nothing can prepare her for what she finds.
In the back, there's a small kitchen, and when you look through that window, the refrigerator is the first thing you see. I looked through the window, and there was blood all over the refrigerator.
Deborah Dunbar wasn't Elizabeth's biological mother, but that never seemed to matter.
Deborah had dated her father, and she just grew a fond liking to her.
My mother passed away when I was 13 years old, so when I connected to Deborah, she reminded me a lot of my mom, and I liked her instantly. She just seemed so calm, sweet, and just laid back.
The love between them was mutual.
You look so happy. Thank you. I love to see.
With Elizabeth, Deborah pretty much took on the role of mother. She nurtured her. She gave her what she needed. She gave her confidence.
And while things didn't work out between Deborah and Elizabeth's father, she remained a part of Elizabeth's life.
It was just something about our relationship. We just stayed connected.
As Elizabeth went on to have children, Deborah then stepped into the role of a grandparent.
She didn't have any kids of her own. So when she was around me and my kids, it really just lit up her world. My children loved her so much.
She regularly visited with, took care of, and spoiled them whenever she could.
She would just put money in your hand just for nothing. And I'm like, Mom, why are you coming over here giving me money? She was just, I just want to make sure that you and the kids have what you need.
Deborah also tenderly cared for her elderly mother.
When her mother got up in age, Deborah actually took care of her by moving in with her.
That desire to help people is also part of what first attracted her to Leon Thomas.
Leon was a bit of a lost soul who struggled in the aftermath of a near-fatal shooting.
Because she has that nurturing spirit, she did the best that she could to try and help him to get better.
I'm too pretty to be hanging with a bum like me.
You'll be up on your feet in no time.
When Deborah met Leon, they hit it off. He was a confidant, he was a friend, and eventually their relationship blossomed and they became boyfriend and girlfriend.
The best thing about being shot is you. You know that?
Well, how about this? Next time you want some attention, how about you just ask me directly, huh?
All right, we could do that. We could do that.
The pair dated for more than 2 decades, and then in 2012, they got married.
And at that time, Leon moves in with Deborah and her mother.
To make ends meet, Deborah found work as a security guard, while Leon cooked at a popular local restaurant.
We used to go to the restaurant Milligan's in West Palm Beach, and he was the top chef there. And every time we would go, she would request for her husband to cook our dishes, and he would bring it out, and he would be so kind and smiling and happy.
But then in early 2019, Deborah's life was thrown into disarray.
The death of Deborah's mother really impacted her.
She was really empty, and she would tell me that I miss her so much.
She started losing weight. She became depressed.
It was also uncertain whether Deborah could remain in her mother's house.
Her mother had a reverse mortgage on her house. So when she died, Deborah wasn't sure if she could come up with the funds to stay there.
But now, after Deborah's daughter called 911, the West Palm Beach police are responding to that same house for a welfare check.
Last thing spoke to his wife.
On the 23rd.
Elizabeth tells the officer what she observed through the window.
The refrigerator has blood scattered all over it. I was freaking out still, and I said, I need to know, is she in the house?
At that point, police and EMTs force entry into the home.
And once they entered, they discovered a very violent crime scene.
There's blood everywhere.
A blood trail on the floor leads officers deeper into the house.
It seems as though something had been dragged into the bedroom.
And the end of the trail reveals another gruesome scene.
There's a body.
After the death of her elderly mother, Deborah Dunbar and her husband Leon Thomas faced an uncertain future.
Deborah wasn't sure if she could come up with the funds to stay in her house.
She tried to put on a good face. She was still a really good grandmother, a really good mother, but inside, she was going through a lot of emotional turmoil.
And now a bloody scene has led officers to a dead body inside her South Florida home.
There was a blue tarp with a comforter over the body.
But lifting the tarp, officers confirm that the body is Deborah.
Around her body, it's wet, and it's surrounded by bags of melted ice.
Apparently, someone may have been trying to slow down the decomposition of her body so that she would not be found quickly.
After finding the body, the officers secure the scene and wait for homicide.
I tried to rush into the door, and they stopped me. And they said, you're gonna have to go down to the police station first for questioning.
While patrol officers transport Elizabeth to the station for a formal statement, homicide detectives arrive on scene to start their investigation.
Once we got to the scene and we started our visual examination, we concluded there was multiple lacerations to the head. She had met a very violent death.
And there's plenty of evidence from every time her killer took a swing.
You had blood cast off on the floors, in the kitchen, in the dining room.
There's blood everywhere, smeared all over the house.
I could say with 28 years at the police department, that was the most violent crime scene I had ever been a part of.
Analyzing the blood patterns, detectives surmise what might have happened.
Our best estimations was probably the incident began in the living room and it went to the kitchen where you had blood all over the walls.
Then, once Deborah was dead or dying, the killer dragged her body back to the bedroom, wrapped her up, and tried to put her on ice to buy some time.
Detectives also search the scene for any evidence of a murder weapon.
They don't find an obvious weapon, but they do find something unusual.
There was 2 pot handles at the scene. There was a handle on the floor in the kitchen, and there was a handle on the floor in the dining room.
Is it possible Deborah had been brutally beaten with pots until the handles broke off?
Why leave the handles, and where were the pots now?
But the biggest question was, why would someone bludgeon the 59-year-old security guard?
Was this a robbery that had gone bad?
But what confuses the detectives is that there are no signs of forced entry.
All the doors were secure.
If you're going to commit a robbery and batter somebody like that, you're not usually going to find somebody lock the doors behind them.
Back at the station, detectives sit down with Deborah's daughter, Elizabeth.
They really want to know about the last time she talked to her mom.
Elizabeth says she'd spoken to her 3 days prior.
I called her and I was like, I know Leon's supposed to be getting out of jail.
Elizabeth tells detectives that Deborah's husband, Leon, had been serving some time in jail.
And Deborah was planning to pick him up when he was released on Friday.
I said, do you want me to go with you?
She was like, no, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
But then, Elizabeth says that Leon had unexpectedly come by her house earlier that morning, alone.
My children told me, Mom, there's some guy looking at our window. Then I went to look and it was him. I walked out and I said, are you okay? What's going on? And he said, I've been looking for your mom.
Elizabeth says she told Leon that she hadn't had any contact with her mother since before his release from jail.
But then she says that Leon told her that when she came to the jail, she wasn't alone.
He said she had a guy in the car with her, and I don't know why she would do that, rub another guy in my face.
Elizabeth says Leon told her he didn't know who the guy was, but that he looked like bad news.
He said the guy looked like a crack addict and that Deborah had started using too.
It's like she's losing her mind. She's at the crack house. She's sleeping with this person, sleeping with that person.
She had allegedly gone on a drug binge. She was acting erratic.
He started to speak negative things about my mom that I knew was untrue.
So Leon, I don't believe that it's my mom.
He was like, no, you don't know her. I know her.
But Elizabeth has another reason to doubt Leon.
Elizabeth begins to tell detectives that her mother, Deborah, and Leon have had a long-standing relationship that has been on and off again.
The volatility is one of the reasons he ended up in jail in the first place.
He went in for domestic violence. They got into an altercation.
But the stint in jail wasn't the only outcome.
She got a restraining order against him.
Deborah Dunbar's stepdaughter has just told the detectives investigating her murder that Deborah's husband, Leon Thomas, had just been released from jail after being arrested for domestic violence.
Deborah had filed the charges and had also taken out a restraining order on Leon.
Elizabeth says many of the issues stemmed from Leon's drug problem.
He used drugs really bad.
He struggled with addiction for years.
She says that when Leon's using, he's often subject to paranoid hallucinations.
I know what you were doing.
What you talking about?
Elizabeth tells police that one of the last domestic violence incidents with her mother was when Leon was sort of having a drug-infused hallucination and thought that he saw Deborah in a crack house cheating on him.
She said he looked like he was high. He said, I saw you in the crack house and you used to sleep with guys there. She was like, why would you think something like that of me? She was like, you're the one running around here using drugs, doing all this crazy stuff. And that's when he punched her.
He was arrested for it and was going to be prosecuted for it.
Elizabeth says she's the one who urged her mom to press charges.
Her whole face was just like swole and her eye was black.
She got a restraining order against him.
He couldn't come within 500 feet of her, is what the court ordered.
But Elizabeth says that despite the restraining order, Deborah had stayed in contact with Leon while he was in jail.
Unfortunately, Deborah opened back up the channels of communication. And as a matter of fact, she planned to go and pick him up from jail when he was released.
Elizabeth says she tried her best to dissuade her mother.
But her mother believes that he's going to change.
Still, she says she had her doubts about Leon's story.
I'm thinking to myself, like, something's just not adding up.
Leon's story about a mysterious crackhead boyfriend just didn't sound like Deborah.
So after Leon left, she decided to reach out to her mother.
I just kept calling her. No answer. I texted, I said, Mom, please call me back.
But when there was still no answer, Elizabeth decided it was time to pay her mom a visit.
I texted her and I said, I'm gonna come find you. Mom, I don't know what's going on.
Mom? She went over to the house, but all of the doors were locked, the lights were off, and the SUV was also missing.
Starting to get worried, Elizabeth says she called Leon.
He then tells her, okay, come pick me up. We'll look for her together. I am at Curry Park.
I went to find him, and he was at the park like he told me he would be. And he said he saw my mom car parked on 3rd Street. So I said, take me to the car.
Elizabeth says he directed her to a house in Riviera Beach, just north of West Palm.
The car was there. Deborah was nowhere to be found.
My mom loved that car. She wouldn't park it somewhere and leave it.
What is my mom's car doing here?
This is where that crack house is at, man.
But she says Leon drew her attention to the nearby house.
He was like, oh, that's a crack house. You see how ragged it is?
In Riviera Beach, just like West Palm, we have areas that have drug homes.
He was like, she's messing with this guy. She's sleeping with him.
Elizabeth tells detectives that she didn't know what to do.
I'm just losing my mind. I'm like trying to keep it together because I don't want to jump to conclusions.
So he goes, maybe we should just go back to the house and see if she's there.
So that's what they did.
When they got there, the house was locked, of course. There wasn't any activity going on.
Then, looking through the back window, Leon said he saw something.
Hey, I think I see blood here. Come here.
He said, uh-oh, something's not right. I see blood. And I said, what are you talking about?
Look, over there.
So I looked through the window.
Right there, you see it?
That's when I saw the blood scatter on the refrigerator and blood on the kitchen floor.
I need to call the police.
Now that's when I panicked and I said, oh no, I have to call the police. And he's like, well, I can't be here.
If you do that, I have to leave. I have a restraining order.
He goes, could you please drive me back? So she's like, sure. And as she's driving him back to Curry Park, she calls 911.
I told him to meet me at the address.
But was the restraining order the only reason Leon didn't want to be there when the cops showed up?
After all, he's just gotten out of jail for abusing Deborah, and now she's beaten to death.
But Elizabeth can't fathom that her mom's husband would have done something like this.
I don't really think that he would go that far.
But if not Leon, then who? Could Deborah's mysterious new boyfriend be the one who committed this crime?
But Elizabeth is adamant that her mother would not be hanging around in crack houses.
She's not like that. My mom goes to church every Sunday.
However, investigators are less sure.
Despite her daughter's claim that Deborah would not be hanging out with addicts, she was with Leon.
Hoping to get Leon's side of the story, detectives ask Elizabeth to guide them to where she left Leon.
They said, do you know where her husband is? And I said, I know exactly where he is. And I drove them directly to him.
He was very polite when we spoke with him.
While chatting, he starts with the same story that he told Deborah's daughter.
You brought a boyfriend with her.
Police are quick to ask him why she would do that.
She was just showing me she going on with her life, I reckon.
Still, he tells police that he accepted the ride, at least at first.
Within a few blocks, Leon says he changed his mind.
I got us, I can't do this. I'll catch you, bus.
And he said that was it.
He got out of the car and never saw Deborah again.
His estranged husband, Leon Thomas, has told the police investigating her murder that he last saw Deborah when she dropped him off at a bus stop the day before.
He said he wasn't comfortable being around Deborah's new boyfriend.
What's the boyfriend's name? I don't know the guy's name.
He also reiterates what he told Deborah's daughter about her doing hard drugs.
She ain't playing in the Little League.
According to Leon, her newfound addiction was taking a visible toll.
He said she'd lost a noticeable amount of weight.
You know, she was thick.
Leon agrees to come into the station for his official statement, where he maintains that he bailed on Deborah and her new boyfriend as soon as he could.
I said, nah, I can't do this. I got my belongings. I got out the truck.
He says that once Deborah dropped him off, he'd gone to Mulligan's and picked up a shift.
Then after work, Leon says he had his friend Jimmy give him a ride.
He claims at that point he was ready to be done with Deborah. Except that's when her daughter started calling him.
She's steady calling me, says, Mom not answering the phone. She never turns her phone off like this. Never ever.
At first, he says he tried to stay out of it.
I said, I don't know anything about that. I cannot call her. I said, just please understand. I said, it will get me in trouble.
But then it all started to nag at him too, so he went looking for Deborah.
I'm thinking I already know where she at. I'm gonna see my mind right. So I walked all the way to Revere.
That's where he says he saw Deborah's SUV parked outside.
To be honest with you, it's a straight up dope house. Nothing goes on there but drugs and prostitution.
Leon claims he never went into the house or tried to confront Deborah.
But he admits he was nervous that something might have happened to her.
So he says that's why he went to her daughter's house to tell Elizabeth what her mother had been up to.
He says he was worried about her.
I said, please, go by there. I cannot go by there.
But when Elizabeth called him an hour or so later and couldn't find her mother, he agreed to let her pick him up.
He says he directed Liz to her mother's SUV, showed her the crack house, and then they went to Deborah's place.
Leon says that at first, he waited in the car while Elizabeth looked around.
Initially, she tells Leon that she doesn't see anything.
I said, no, you gotta know how to look.
He ends up getting out of the car and goes to the back of the house with her.
He's also seeming to direct her to exactly where she needs to be able to look. And that's when they spot the blood.
I said, look real good. She finally saw it.
But when Elizabeth started to call the police, Leon says he asked her to drop him off at the park.
I said, I've already went beyond my limit.
Leon tells detectives that's the only time he'd been to the house since he got out of jail.
Did you do anything to your wife?
No.
How? Did you hurt her? I'm just asking. I have to ask.
But the detectives aren't so sure.
During the process of police questioning Leon, they happened to notice that his hand was cut and also swollen.
When you have the suspect in there, especially when it was a violent encounter, you would look to see, obviously, for physical injuries.
They asked him about that injury. He said, well, I was helping out a friend.
He claimed that he was working with his friend Jimmy on a car, and he hit his hand and it got cut.
The detectives don't necessarily believe Leon, but they also don't have enough to hold him. Not even for violating Deborah's restraining order.
Since she was the one that went to the county jail and picked him up, she violated the no contact order. So it was kind of like it was a moot point to be able to make that arrest. It wouldn't have stuck. So that was why we decided to let him walk out the door.
However, the detectives do follow up with Leon's friend, Jimmy.
Yeah, I know Leon. I just given him a ride the other day.
He even told Jimmy that Deborah had come and picked him up at the jail with somebody else in the car.
But as far as them working on a car and Leon getting injured, Jimmy didn't know anything about that.
But I know he must have cut it before we met up.
In fact, when he picked up Leon, he noticed that his hand was already in a bandage.
Detectives investigating Deborah Dunbar's murder have just caught her husband Leon Thomas in what appears to be a lie.
Leon told detectives that he had hurt his hand while helping his friend Jimmy work on his truck. When detectives reached out to Jimmy, Jimmy said he didn't help me do anything. When I met him, his hand was bandaged up.
So he was definitely a liar.
But was it a lie to cover up the fact that he injured himself when beating Deborah to death?
That's what Jimmy thinks.
When I heard the news, what happened to Deborah, I just assumed Leon had something to do with it.
Thanks, Jimmy. We'll be in touch.
But while the discrepancies between Leon and Jimmy's stories are enough to raise detective suspicion, they're not enough to make an arrest.
Looking for more evidence, the detectives head to the location that Leon indicated that he had found Deborah's SUV.
Miss Dunbar's vehicle was located in Riviera Beach, where he said that last he had seen her.
When police finally find Deborah's SUV, they look on the inside.
In the front seat, they see what appears to be possible bloodstains on the driver's seat and steering wheel.
They found blood splatter and other things that indicated that the vehicle was driven after Deborah's murder.
While the car is towed into the crime lab for processing, detectives canvass the neighborhood.
When you do these things, after you fan out through the neighborhood, start taking statements, looking for video evidence.
Several homes and businesses nearby have security camera systems, and the owners are happy to provide detectives with the footage.
Technology is a game changer in a lot of incidents.
Hoping to determine who drove Deborah's SUV to Riviera Beach, detectives also turn to the city's traffic monitoring systems.
There's cameras all around the city. There's license plate readers. Buses have cameras on them. For days, we searched the area around Riviera Beach where the car was, trying to find holes in his story.
And then, detectives find what they're looking for.
Leon was actually caught on camera.
They find traffic camera footage from Friday morning, not long after Leon was released from jail.
It's of Deborah driving her SUV.
They only saw Deborah and Leon in the car. They didn't see anyone else.
Then, hours later, a plate reader picks up Deborah's SUV driving north.
This would be consistent with the direction of traveling from Deborah's house to Riviera Beach.
But it's not until detectives review the doorbell camera footage from a home in Riviera Beach that they get their first glimpse of the driver.
They see a man actually driving the SUV up to the spot, getting out of the car, and the build and the height of the person looked a whole lot like Leon.
Leon Thomas was the person that had brought Deborah's car to that place in Riviera Beach and then walked away.
Now convinced that Leon is Deborah's killer, investigators have him brought in for another round of questioning.
They confronted him with the fact that they saw footage from when he was picked up from jail, and there was no one else in the car but him and Deborah.
This is you in the passenger seat, the same spot that you were in when you got in it at the jail. So, I know you were still in Deborah's car. You didn't get out of the car.
After we were able to show him that that story was bogus, it then, I think, got real to him.
Leon was forced to admit that there was no other man.
Now is a good time that we start really getting down to business about what happened between the two of you.
He said, you know what? I need to tell you something.
Leon now says that he and Deborah first went by the restaurant where he worked, before heading to her house.
And after getting to the house, Leon admits that an argument ensued.
Look at me when I'm talking to you.
You know what, Leon? I should have left your ass in there.
So how many times did you hit her?
Leon says that isn't what happened at all.
He says he never hit her.
Just shoved her.
He had pushed her, and she had hit her head on the wall.
Now you ain't got nothing to say now, do you?
But when he left, he said that she was conscious.
Put on the spot by detectives investigating his estranged wife Deborah Dunbar's murder, Leon Thomas has admitted they got into an argument on the morning she died.
He proceeds to tell us that he pushes her and she hits her head on the wall, but definitely minimizing the damage.
But the detectives don't buy it.
I know she wasn't fine when you left. Something bad went down in the house.
But as detectives keep pushing, Leon sticks to his story.
Everything else.
He says when he left the house, Deborah was mostly fine, but maybe a bit out of sorts.
She was shaken up.
When detectives ask if she was bleeding, Leon denies it.
We've been to the house. You would see blood. Yeah.
I didn't see any blood.
He could not explain how she ended up dead later.
So detectives try giving him an out.
Maybe something went wrong. I think maybe you killed her and forgot about it, blacked out, anything like that.
They asked him point blank, did you kill her? Leon continues to say no.
Eventually, detectives have had enough.
We were there for probably 13 hours total, probably about 6 or 7 of them just sitting there talking.
But even without a full confession, they believe they have enough evidence to build a strong case against Leon.
They go ahead and arrest him for second-degree murder in the death of Deborah Dunbar.
It's a welcome relief for her family.
The day they arrested him, I had goosebumps all over my arm, and I was like, okay, Mom, you're gonna have justice now.
Their case becomes even stronger when detectives pull Deborah's phone records.
They mirrored up to the video that we have. So we were able to put that timeline together. So I know that that attack happened somewhere after 7:30 in the morning and before 11:30 in the morning when he makes contact with his friend, Jimmy.
The autopsy also confirms what detectives had first surmised at the crime scene.
Deborah died as a result of blunt force trauma to her head, her face, her neck, and she also had extensive defensive wounds on her hands.
The lacerations to the head was ultimately the cause of death.
In other words, someone had done far worse than simply shove her.
There is also further proof of Leon's lies.
The autopsy report comes with a toxicology report, and the toxicology report stated that there were no drugs in her system. So his claims of her using drugs and being off the deep end were his reflect of what he was doing.
Based on the ME's findings, detectives are convinced that on the morning of the murder, Leon's fight with Deborah escalated far more than he claimed.
She picked him up at the jail. There was nobody else in the car. They come back, they go inside. He's trying to mess around with her. She doesn't want to, and they start having some arguments.
No. Leon, not right now.
2 months and that's what I come home to?
We believe the first contact between Miss Dunbar and Mr. Thomas occurred in the living room, and then ultimately it moved to the kitchen and the dining room area. She fought as best she could, and ultimately there was no way she was going to be able to overpower him.
this woman that you love, to think that you could beat her to death, that you would drag her into the bedroom and place her in a tarp with sheets all over her and leave her there and put her on ice bags. To be able to do that, you definitely have this dark terribleness about yourself.
Then, that night, Leon drove Deborah's SUV up to Riviera Beach to bolster his claim that she was doing drugs and sleeping with other men.
I believe that at some point in his mind, he realized there's no way I'm going to be able to cover this up.
I think his guilt was getting to him, which is the reason that he contacted Elizabeth.
But prosecutors never have to prove their case in court.
Leon's defense team decided that it was in his best interest to plead guilty instead of going to trial.
He would have gotten life in prison if this had gone to trial.
He pled guilty to the lesser offense of second-degree murder, and he ended up getting 60 years in prison.
While this would not bring Deborah back, it would bring her family some closure that Leon Thomas would likely spend the rest of his life behind bars.
The sentence ultimately leaves Deborah's family with mixed feelings.
We wanted him to have life in prison, but at least he's away for 60 years.
But no amount of prison time can make up for the loss of Deborah.
It's very unfair because even in prison, he still gets to exist. Deborah Dunbar, she gave all that she could to help other people have a better quality of life, and hers was taken from her.
Every year, my kids, when her birthday come around, they get like, oh, we miss Mama Deborah so much. And I just have to constantly remind them of the good times that we shared.
And part of her healing comes from knowing that she did everything she could to figure out the truth of what happened to her mother.
I truly believe that she's in peace with her mom. All I can do is hold the great memories that I have of her in my heart and continue to fight for women who are in domestic violence situations. You deserve to be loved, you deserve to be happy, and you don't have to settle. And if there's a way to escape a situation, take it.
The city of Austin in the early 90s was a place caught in a gentle transition, still holding fast to its identity as a laid-back, close-knit college town before the explosive technological boom would forever alter its skyline and its soul. It was a city where neighbors knew one another, where doors were often left unlocked, and where the sense of community's safety was taken for granted. The crisp, cool air of early December carried the anticipation of the approaching holiday season, bringing a festive and relaxed atmosphere to the quiet suburban neighborhoods. Families were beginning to decorate their homes. Students were preparing for their final exams before the winter break, and the local businesses were preparing for the seasonal rush. Among these businesses was a modest but popular establishment located in a nondescript strip mall on West Anderson Lane, a place that sold sweet treats and served as a casual gathering spot for the local youth. This yogurt shop, with its bright pastel decor and humming refrigerated machines, was a symbol of adolescent innocence, a place where teenagers could earn their first paychecks, hang out with friends, and taste the first drops of independence in a secure environment. No one in the quiet capital of Texas could have possibly anticipated that this unassuming, brightly lit storefront would soon become the epicenter of a darkness so profound that it would shatter the city's sense of security forever and leave a permanent scar on the collective memory of the community. The victims of this impending tragedy were 4 young girls whose lives were deeply intertwined through family bonds, school friendships, and the simple shared experiences of growing up in a peaceful suburban environment. Jennifer Harbison, at 17 years old, was known for her sense of responsibility, her bright smile, and her dedication to her part-time job at the yogurt shop. She was the kind of teenager who took her duties seriously, saving her modest earnings and planning for a future full of bright possibilities. Working alongside her was her close friend and classmate, Eliza Thomas, also 17, who shared Jennifer's work ethic and vibrant spirit. Together, they formed a reliable team, managing the evening shifts with a cheerful efficiency that endeared them to regular customers and the store management alike. They were navigating the complex transition from childhood to young adulthood, balancing schoolwork, social lives, and the demands of part-time employment with the grace and energy typical of their age. The yogurt shop was not just a workplace for them. It was a social hub, a place where they could chat, listen to music, and assert their growing independence while remaining in a safe and familiar setting. On that particular Friday evening, the dynamic within the shop was further enlivened by the presence of two younger girls who had come to spend time with the older teenagers. Sarah Harbison, Jennifer's 15-year-old younger sister, frequently visited the shop. The bond between the two sisters was strong, characterized by a typical mixture of sibling affection and the younger sister's admiration for the older one. Sarah was vivacious, friendly, and deeply connected to her peer group, enjoying the freedom that a Friday night in a safe suburban area provided. Accompanying Sarah was her very close friend, Amy Ayers, who was the youngest of the group at just 13 years old. Amy was described by those who knew her as sweet, innocent, and full of life, a girl who was just beginning to explore the world outside her family home. The younger girls had spent the earlier part of the evening at the nearby North Cross Mall, engaging in the typical teenage activities of window shopping, talking, and enjoying the weekend atmosphere before walking over to the yogurt shop to meet up with Jennifer and Eliza. Their presence in the store that night was a testament to perceived safety of their community, a belief that a brightly lit strip mall on a main road was a perfectly secure place for young teenagers to spend a Friday evening. As the evening progressed, the bustling activity of West Anderson Lane began to slowly subside, giving way to the quiet stillness of the approaching midnight hour. The nearby movie theater let out its final patrons. The traffic on the main road thinned out to occasional passing cars, and the neighboring stores in the strip mall turned off their signs and locked their doors for the night. Inside the yogurt shop, Jennifer and Eliza began the familiar and repetitive process of closing down the store. This involved a series of mundane tasks that they had performed countless times before, a routine that marked the end of the work week and the beginning of their weekend. They wiped down the sticky countertops, cleaned the dispensing nozzles of the heavy yogurt machines, swept the tile floors, and began the process of counting the cash register to reconcile the day's sales. Sarah and Amy kept them company, chatting and laughing, the four girls creating a warm and lively atmosphere within the brightly lit interior of the shop, completely isolated from the growing darkness and quiet of the empty parking lot outside. The contrast between the cheerful, domestic chores happening inside the shop and the silent, unobserved exterior world created a deceptive sense of complete security, a fragile bubble of safety that was about to be violently and inexplicably pierced. The exact sequence of events that occurred as the clock inched closer to midnight remains obscure by the passage of time and the deliberate destruction of evidence, but the atmosphere inside the shop shifted from relaxed camaraderie to unimaginable terror. At some point, the doors were locked, but the safety they were meant to provide proved entirely illusory. The sanctuary of the brightly lit store was breached, transforming a familiar space of teenage socializing and part-time labor into a site of unprecedented violence. The mundane objects of their evening routine, the cleaning supplies, the uniforms, the cash register, were suddenly rendered irrelevant in the face of an overwhelming and ruthless intrusion. The four girls, who just moments before had been talking about their plans for the weekend, school gossip, and the upcoming holidays, were abruptly subjected to a harrowing ordeal that defies comprehension. They were forced into cramped, windowless back room of the store, a space normally reserved for storing inventory and taking quick breaks, which now became a claustrophobic chamber of horror. The sheer brutality of the violence inflicted upon them stood in stark, incomprehensible contrast to their youth, their innocence, and the triviality of their suburban Friday night. In a calculated and devastating effort to conceal the magnitude of the crime and obliterate all physical evidence, an accelerant was deliberately poured throughout the back room and ignited. The fire started quickly, feeding voraciously on the cardboard boxes, paper cups, plastic containers, and the highly flammable liquids used for cleaning the store. The flames spread with terrifying speed, transforming the small back office into an inferno of intense heat and thick, suffocating smoke. The fire rapidly compromised the structural integrity of the interior walls, melting the plastic fixtures and sending thick plumes of toxic black smoke billowing up toward the ceiling and eventually forcing its way out into the cold night air. The deliberate setting of the fire was a cold and methodical act, designed not only to destroy forensic clues, but also to delay the discovery of the victims, ensuring that the perpetrator or perpetrators could slip away unnoticed into the darkness of the Austin night. The flames danced violently inside the building, a destructive force unleashed to wipe away the traces of an unspeakable act, leaving behind a smoldering ruin that would soon confront the first responders with a scene of unimaginable devastation. It was approximately 1:45 when a police officer on routine patrol happened to be driving past the strip mall on West Anderson Lane and noticed the ominous signs of trouble. Thick, dark smoke was visibly pouring from the roof and the rear vents of the yogurt shop, a stark anomaly against the quiet, dark backdrop of the sleeping city. The officer immediately radioed dispatch, reporting a structural fire at the commercial location and requesting the immediate dispatch of the fire department. Within minutes, the piercing wail of sirens shattered the stillness of night as fire engines rushed to the scene. The firefighters arrived expecting to combat a standard commercial property fire, a routine event caused perhaps by a faulty electrical wire or a piece of kitchen equipment left running unattended. They quickly deployed their heavy hoses, connected to nearby hydrants, and began their tactical approach to breach the building and extinguish the flames. The exterior of the shop gave no immediate indication of the nightmare that lay hidden within its burning walls, and the first responders operated with the focused urgency of professionals dealing with a standard emergency situation, entirely unaware that they were about to step into the darkest chapter of their city's history. As the firefighters forced their way to the front doors, they were immediately met with a wall of intense heat and blinding, acrid smoke that severely limited their visibility and required them to rely on their training and heavy breathing apparatus. They pushed forward methodically, dragging the heavy, water-filled hoses past the melted yogurt machines, the charred countertops, and the debris-strewn customer area, directing high-pressure streams of water at the seat of the fire located in the rear of the building. The water hissed and turned to thick steam as it hit the superheated surfaces, further obscuring the environment and turning the interior of the shop into a dark, chaotic cavern. They navigated the treacherous, slippery floors, moving cautiously toward the back room where the flames were most concentrated. The process of suppression was arduous, the fire fighting back with intense heat fueled by the accelerants, but the coordinated efforts of the fire crews eventually began to beat down the main body of the fire, turning the roaring flames into smoldering, smoking ash. It was during this grueling process of overhauling the scene, checking for hot spots, and ensuring the fire was completely extinguished that the routine nature of the call evaporated in an instant. As the smoke began to clear slightly and the powerful beams of the firefighters' flashlights swept across the blackened, waterlogged ruins of the back room, the true and horrifying nature of the emergency was suddenly revealed. Amidst the charred debris, the melted plastic, and the soaked cardboard, they discovered the remains of the 4 young girls. The initial shock of finding victims in what was assumed to be an empty commercial building at midnight was immediately compounded by the grim realization of condition in which the bodies were found. It was instantly apparent to the seasoned first responders that these girls had not simply succumbed to smoke inhalation or the flames of an accidental fire. The physical positioning of the victims, the horrific evidence of bindings, and the undeniable signs of severe, deliberate trauma indicated a level of intentional violence that defied immediate processing. The firefighters, trained to save lives, protect property, found themselves standing in the center of a gruesome crime scene, the water from their hoses mingling with the tragic aftermath of a massacre. The immediate area was secured. The fire marshal and homicide detectives were urgently summoned, and the long, agonizing, and incredibly complex process of attempting to understand the incomprehensible horror that had descended upon the yogurt shop that night began, casting a long and enduring shadow over the entire community. The immediate aftermath of the horrific discovery plunged the Austin Police Department into an unprecedented logistical and emotional nightmare as the sheer brutality of the crime scene left seasoned detectives utterly bewildered and searching for elusive answers. The devastating fire, intentionally set by the ruthless perpetrator to deliberately mask the atrocities committed within the cramped back room, had effectively incinerated a vast amount of crucial physical evidence that might have otherwise provided immediate leads for the desperate investigators. The thousands of gallons of high-pressure water pumped into the compromised building by the courageous fire department, while absolutely necessary to extinguish the raging inferno, had tragically compounded the complex investigative difficulties by washing away fragile biological clues, diluting microscopic blood spatter patterns, and fundamentally degrading potential fingerprints left on the premises. Dedicated detectives and meticulous forensic technicians were forced to painstakingly sift through mountains of charred debris, melted plastic containers, and waterlogged ceiling tiles, searching desperately for any microscopic trace of the killer or killers who had orchestrated this unprecedented massacre. The peaceful community of Austin, previously lulled into a comforting sense of security by its enduring reputation as a safe and idyllic university city, was violently jolted into a state of profound paranoia, collective trauma, and overwhelming grief. Worried parents immediately began locking their doors with newfound urgency. Local teenagers were suddenly subjected to strict evening curfews, and a palpable shroud of heavy fear descended upon the suburban neighborhoods as terrified residents realized that a vicious monster was actively roaming their familiar streets. Law enforcement agencies worked tirelessly around the clock, conducting hundreds of exhaustive interviews, diligently following up on thousands of frantic tips from terrified citizens, and deeply analyzing every conceivable angle of the tragedy. Yet the massive investigation agonizingly stalled almost as quickly as it had begun. The frustrating lack of a clear motive, the chilling absence of eyewitnesses from the desolate midnight parking lot, and the severe degradation of the critical forensic evidence created a seemingly impenetrable wall that frustrated law enforcement and deeply anguished the grieving families for many difficult years. As weeks slowly bled into months and months relentlessly stretched into agonizing years, the infamous yogurt shop murders transformed from an active, urgent community crisis into a haunting cold case that cast a remarkably long, oppressive shadow over the entire police department. The innocent faces of the 4 young victims became permanent, heartbreaking fixtures on station bulletin boards and in the troubled minds of the dedicated detectives assigned to the seemingly unsolvable puzzle, representing a constant, silent demand for justice that remained frustratingly out of reach. The intense, unrelenting public scrutiny and the constant media pressure created a toxic atmosphere of desperation within the investigative ranks, as the traumatized community loudly demanded definitive answers that the authorities were simply incapable of providing given the highly compromised state of the physical evidence. Every seemingly promising lead eventually evaporated into a frustrating, heartbreaking dead end. Every potential suspect was thoroughly vetted and ultimately cleared of involvement, and a chilling, unbearable realization that the perpetrators might never be brought to justice began to take firm root in the public consciousness. This prolonged period of agonizing uncertainty took a devastating, immeasurable toll on the fragile families of the victims, who were unfairly forced to navigate their profound grief without the necessary closure that a successful criminal prosecution might have eventually provided to ease their suffering. The local police department, profoundly desperate to definitively close their most high-profile and emotionally charged murder case, found themselves increasingly vulnerable to the dangerous pitfalls of confirmation bias and the intense, overwhelming institutional pressure to produce a tangible, satisfying result at absolutely any cost. This remarkably desperate atmosphere ultimately paved a tragic way for a deeply flawed phase of the investigation, unfortunately setting the disastrous stage for a catastrophic miscarriage of justice that would compound the original horror with decades of unnecessary legal and moral turmoil. The overwhelming, noble desire to heal the fractured city inadvertently blinded those specifically tasked with uncovering the absolute truth, leading them down a highly dangerous path where mere intuition and aggressive coercion unfortunately overshadowed hard, empirical scientific evidence. The trajectory of the agonizingly stalled investigation took a dramatic and ultimately disastrous turn in the late 1990s when law enforcement suddenly announced a major breakthrough that sent immense shockwaves, profound relief, and renewed anguish cascading to the tired city. Based on highly circumstantial connections and a renewed, aggressively focused interrogational strategy, police tightly zeroed in on 4 local young men who had been impressionable teenagers themselves at the exact time of the brutal, unforgettable murders. Robert Springsteen, Michael Scott, Maurice Pierce, and Forrest Wellborn were abruptly thrust into the unforgiving, glaring spotlight of intense public condemnation, formally accused of orchestrating and callously executing the horrific crimes that had deeply scarred the city of Austin for nearly an entire decade. The fundamental cornerstone of the prosecution's seemingly formidable case did not rest on a solid foundation of irrefutable physical evidence linking the terrified young men to the charred backroom, but rather on highly controversial confessions obtained under circumstances that would later be heavily and critically scrutinized by legal experts. during grueling marathon interrogation sessions lasting dozens of continuous hours, completely isolated from necessary legal counsel and forcefully subjected to intense, relentless psychological pressure, both Springsteen and Scott eventually provided desperate statements, falsely implicating themselves and each other in the horrific sequence of violent events. These highly problematic confessions, although blatantly inconsistent with the established known facts of the complex crime scene and rapidly recanted by the young men who desperately claimed extreme police coercion, provided the desperately needed narrative that the authorities and the traumatized public had been blindly craving. The sheer, overwhelming relief of finally having to find suspects in police custody largely overshadowed the glaring, undeniable inconsistencies in their written statements and a complete, baffling absence of any forensic material placing them anywhere near the yoga shop on that fateful December night. The massive machinery of the criminal justice system, heavily fueled by righteous public indignation and a desperate, collective desire for permanent closure, began to grind relentlessly forward, eagerly preparing to aggressively prosecute the four men despite the fragile and deeply compromised nature of the foundational evidence presented against them. The subsequent legal proceedings rapidly became a massive media spectacle, thoroughly captivating the entire state of Texas and the broader nation, as the harrowing, gruesome details of the crime were painfully revisited in the sterile, formal environment of the criminal courtroom. The serious charges against Maurice Pierce and Forrest Wellborn were eventually dismissed by prosecutors before the trial commenced due to an overwhelming, undeniable lack of corroborating evidence, leaving only Springsteen and Scott to face the full, terrifying weight of the capital murder indictments. During their respective, highly publicized trials, the aggressive prosecution relied almost exclusively on the videotaped confessions, skillfully manipulating the highly emotionally charged atmosphere of the courtroom and deliberately downplaying the brutal, exhausting, and highly coercive conditions under which those deeply flawed statements were originally extracted by detectives. The passionate defense attorneys fought valiantly and tirelessly, repeatedly pointing out the complete, undeniable lack of matching DNA, identifiable fingerprints, or any other microscopic physical trace connecting their frightened clients to the innocent victims, and vehemently arguing that the false confessions were the classic, tragic product of severe psychological intimidation. However, the visceral, undeniable horror of the brutal crime and persuasive, manipulative power of a recorded admission, even a heavily tainted one, proved practically insurmountable for the sympathetic juries tasked with deciding the ultimate fate of the two unfortunate defendants. Robert Springsteen was tragically convicted of capital murder and subsequently sentenced to die by lethal injection, a profound and terrifying condemnation that placed him directly on the grim expanse of the Texas death row, helplessly awaiting execution for a heinous crime he steadfastly maintained he absolutely did not commit. Michael Scott was similarly found guilty by a separate jury and handed a mandatory, devastating sentence of life imprisonment, wrongfully condemning him to spend the remainder of his natural days trapped behind iron bars, completely stripped of his basic freedom and his promising future. The shocking convictions were initially hailed by the media as a massive, definitive triumph for the police department and a highly necessary step toward emotional healing for the victims' devastated families, completely obscuring the terrifying, hidden reality that the actual, ruthless perpetrator was still walking completely free while entirely innocent men unjustly paid the ultimate price. The comforting illusion of justice, however, slowly and inevitably began to unravel as the tireless, dedicated efforts of brilliant appellate lawyers and diligent innocence projects meticulously dismantled the deeply flawed, unconstitutional convictions over the course of the following tumultuous decade. The critical legal turning point finally arrived when the higher appellate courts fundamentally scrutinized the prosecution's aggressive tactics, specifically and firmly ruling that the state had egregiously violated the core constitutional rights of defendants by improperly using their respective, interlocking confessions against each other without affording them the fundamental right to cross-examination. Furthermore, the rapid, unprecedented advancement of modern forensic technology, which had evolved exponentially since the brutal murders originally occurred in 1991, dealt the final, absolutely fatal blow to the prosecution's rapidly crumbling, fabricated narrative. In a stunning, world-changing revelation in the year 2008, cutting-edge DNA testing meticulously performed on male genetic material carefully extracted from the victims definitively and scientifically proved that the biological evidence completely excluded Springsteen, Scott, Pierce, and well-born from any involvement. This irrefutable, undeniable scientific proof completely shattered the entire structural foundation of the state's flawed case, immediately transforming the supposedly closed, solved investigation back into a highly active, agonizing mystery, and exposing a catastrophic, systemic failure of the entire criminal justice system. Faced with absolutely insurmountable scientific evidence of their definitive innocence and a deeply compromised, indefensible legal position, the embarrassed courts officially overturned the wrongful convictions, and all pending charges against Springsteen and Scott were finally and formally dismissed in the year 2009. While profoundly traumatized men were finally released from their physical, concrete cages, they tragically re-entered a rapidly changed world that had moved on entirely without them, carrying the permanent, invisible psychological scars of wrongful imprisonment and the enduring, unfair stigma being publicly associated with one of the most infamous, brutal crimes in the state's entire history. The yogurt shop murders were unfortunately once again plunged into deep darkness, the investigative trail significantly colder than ever before, leaving the devastated families of the 4 innocent girls to grapple with a renewed, crushing sense of despair and a terrifying, haunting realization that the true, elusive monster had successfully evaded capture and punishment for nearly 2 entire decades. The seemingly impenetrable, suffocating darkness surrounding the infamous cold case finally yielded to the relentless, unstoppable march of scientific innovation more than 3 long decades after the destructive flames had totally consumed the yogurt shop on West Anderson Lane. In a truly monumental historic breakthrough in the year 2025, brilliant investigators effectively utilized the revolutionary, cutting-edge capabilities of investigative genetic genealogy, an advanced technique that allows specialized experts to meticulously trace complex familial lineages using microscopic, previously unusable amounts of heavily degraded DNA. By carefully uploading the unknown suspect's specific genetic profile, preserved almost miraculously from the chaotic, waterlogged crime scene into extensive, publicly accessible ancestry databases, diligent and patient researchers meticulously constructed an intricate, sprawling family tree that eventually pointed directly and undeniably to a singular, horrifying suspect. The extracted DNA conclusively and perfectly matched Robert Eugene Brasher's, a highly prolific, extremely dangerous serial killer and rapist whose terrifying reign of brutal violence had spanned across multiple states before he violently ended his own life during a tense, armed standoff with local police at a rural Missouri motel in the year 1999. Extensive, rigorous subsequent investigations into his dark background revealed that Brasher's had a long, documented history of horrific violence against women, a verified, undeniable physical presence in the Austin area during the exact time of the murders, and a chillingly exact, undeniable ballistic connection to the specific caliber of weapons used in the brutal executions. This definitive, undeniable scientific and historical resolution finally provided the long-awaited, desperate answers that had painfully eluded the devastated community and the grieving, exhausted family for 34 agonizing years, finally unmasking the true, deceased architect of the 1991 massacre. In February of the year 2026, firmly armed with the absolute, unshakable certainty provided by the irrefutable genetic and ballistic evidence, the judicial system officially and formally completely exonerated the 4 men who had been wrongfully accused, permanently clearing their tarnished names, and finally closing the darkest, most agonizing chapter in the history of Austin. The final resolution of the Austin yogurt shop murders brought a profoundly complicated wave of emotions to a community that had been held captive by a relentless ghost for nearly 3.5 decades as the definitive announcement echoed to the grand halls of the Texas judicial system in February 2026, completely exonerating the 4 wrongfully convicted men and definitively naming Robert Eugene Brasher's as the sole perpetrator. The collective exhalation of the city was remarkably palpable. However, this long-awaited closure was intrinsically intertwined with an unshakable, profound sorrow for the irreplaceable years utterly stolen. For the families of Jennifer Harbison, Eliza Thomas, Sarah Harbison, and Amy Ayers, the absolute scientific confirmation of the true killer provided a necessary, undeniable factual endpoint to their agonizing quest for the absolute truth. Yet, it could never magically erase the unimaginable pain of living through 34 agonizing years of false starts, dashed hopes, and the deeply unsettling knowledge that innocent men had almost paid the ultimate price for a monstrous crime they absolutely did not commit. The devastating revelation that the real monster had successfully escaped earthly justice by taking his own miserable life decades earlier added another, incredibly bitter dimension to their monumental grief. There would be no dramatic courtroom confrontation, no opportunity for the devastated parents to look the ruthless architect of their nightmares squarely in the eye and vehemently demand to know exactly why their precious daughters were so callously slaughtered on a random Friday night. The chilling finality of his death meant that countless lingering questions regarding his exact movements, his twisted motivations, and the specific, horrific sequence of events inside that burning back room would permanently remain locked away in the silent, impenetrable void of forgotten, unmarked grave forever and always. Despite this frustrating lack of traditional cinematic trial, the irrefutable power of the advanced investigative genetic genealogy profoundly reshaped the entire landscape of modern forensic science and offered a beacon of remarkable hope for thousands of other seemingly unsolvable cold cases scattered across the nation. The tragic saga of the yogurt shop served as a stark, unforgiving catalyst for widespread systemic reform within the criminal justice system, specifically highlighting the extreme, catastrophic dangers of prioritizing speedy resolutions over meticulous, objective evidence gathering. Police departments nationwide fundamentally overhauled their interrogation protocols, strictly mandating continuous, uninterrupted electronic recording of all custodial interviews to absolutely prevent the insidious psychological coercion that had so tragically derailed the original investigation. The heartbreaking ordeal endured by Robert Springsteen, Michael Scott, Maurice Pierce, and Forrest Wellborn became a mandatory, cautionary case study in law schools and police academies, strongly underscoring the vital, indispensable necessity of constitutional safeguards and the absolute presumption of innocence. While no amount of retroactive apologies or financial compensation could ever adequately restore the youth, the boundless potential, or the fundamental peace of mind violently stripped from these wrongfully accused men, their eventual, absolute legal exoneration represented a crucially monumental historic victory for fundamental human rights. They bravely stepped forward from the oppressive shadows of public condemnation, their tarnished reputations officially and permanently cleansed by the uncompromising, undeniable truth of the genetic evidence. The city of Austin itself, forever fundamentally altered by the devastating scars of the 1991 tragedy, slowly began the arduous, complex process of collective spiritual healing. The physical location of the former yogurt shop on West Anderson Lane had long since been repurposed, completely transformed into various other mundane commercial enterprises over the passing decades, deliberately masking the unimaginable horror that had once brutally occurred right there. Yet, the indelible memory of the 4 innocent girls remained permanently etched into the very foundation of the community, an enduring, heartbreaking testament to the fragility of suburban safety and the enduring power of profound, collective mourning. A beautiful, serene memorial garden was eventually established in a quiet, nearby municipal park, featuring 4 vibrant, blossoming trees specifically planted to constantly honor their brief, shining lives and provide a peaceful, dedicated space for quiet reflection. The annual vigils, once characterized by desperate pleas for elusive answers, slowly transitioned into gentle, respectful celebrations of their enduring, radiant, youthful, beautiful, glowing spirits. The relentless, exhausting pursuit of justice had fundamentally tested the absolute limits of human endurance, exposing the deepest, darkest flaws of a desperate system, while simultaneously showcasing the remarkable, unyielding dedication of those few determined individuals who simply refused to let the forgotten truth remain permanently buried. The brilliant scientists, the tireless appellate attorneys, and the relentlessly dedicated cold case detectives who finally cracked the impenetrable mystery demonstrated profound, unwavering commitment to rectifying historical wrongs, proving that the passage of time could not completely extinguish the burning light of empirical scientific truth. The Austin community, previously deeply bound together by a shared, suffocating trauma, slowly found a renewed, stronger sense of profound solidarity in the ultimate revelation of the undeniable facts. The profound lessons tragically learned from the catastrophic mishandling of the initial investigation fundamentally transformed the basic methodology of local law enforcement, ensuring that future criminal inquiries would be rigorously guided by objective, verifiable data rather than dangerous, subjective assumptions or immense political pressure. The lingering, toxic shadows of doubt and deeply rooted suspicion that had unfairly haunted the local neighborhoods for countless years were finally, decisively dispelled by the blinding, irrefutable absolute clarity of conclusive DNA. This monumental breakthrough served as a powerful, undeniable reminder that true justice, though often agonizingly delayed and frequently obstructed by human error, can still occasionally emerge triumphant from the darkest, most confusing depths of despair. As the historical narrative of the yogurt shop murders is finally and properly recorded for future generations, it stands as a complex, multifaceted tragedy that encompasses the very worst and the absolute best of the human condition. It is a terrifying story of unimaginable cruelty and profound systemic failure, but it is also a remarkably inspiring saga of relentless scientific innovation, unwavering pure legal advocacy, and the invincible resilience of the human spirit. The 4 young girls whose lives were so violently stolen on that fateful December night will never be completely forgotten, their innocent faces forever serving as a constant, silent reminder of the absolute necessity for diligence, compassion, and absolute integrity within the pursuit of justice. The heavy, suffocating burden of the unsolved mystery has finally been lifted from the weary shoulders of the grieving families and the traumatized city, completely replaced by a somber, quiet acceptance of the harsh, unalterable historical reality. The painful chapters of wrongful accusations and blind, entirely desperate panic have officially been closed, permanently replaced by a definitive, scientifically sound conclusion that leaves absolutely no room for any lingering, corrosive doubt. The legacy of Jennifer, Eliza, Sarah, and Amy now transcends the horrific circumstances of their untimely deaths, their memories actively serving to fiercely protect others from the devastating miscarriages of justice that so deeply mar the immediate aftermath of their tragic passing. The exonerated men, though permanently scarred by their harrowing ordeals, stand as living, breathing testaments to the crucial, indispensable importance of an adversarial legal system deeply rooted securely in objective, highly undeniable solid scientific facts. The true killer, though safely insulated from earthly punishment by the finality of his own cowardly demise, has been completely stripped of his absolute anonymity and his dark, hidden power, his terrible name permanently recorded in the annals of criminal history as the sole architect of this monumental tragedy. The city of Austin, though forever changed, continues to thrive and rapidly expand, its vibrant, energetic future deeply informed by the painful, necessary lessons meticulously extracted from its darkest, most challenging historical chapter. As time continues its relentless, unstoppable forward march, the acute, searing, agonizing pain of the original trauma slowly fades into a deeply ingrained, permanent institutional memory, a solemn, lasting promise that such profound, catastrophic failure of justice will absolutely never be allowed to happen within those city limits ever again. The tragic Austin yogurt shop murders, once a terrifying symbol of inexplicable evil and impenetrable mystery, now definitively represent the ultimate, undeniable triumph of scientific perseverance and the enduring, unshakable human demand for absolute, unvarnished truth. The long, agonizing journey has finally reached its conclusive, permanent end, bringing a quiet, lasting, peaceful resolution to the innocent souls and permanently successfully restoring fundamental balance to the whole universe.